My name is Alexandra with This is Improv, and I am here to teach you something new. Yeah, I really do need to sleep more. Today, I am going to be telling you guys a little bit about a man named Meisner. If you have taken acting classes, even at a high school level, you have hopefully heard of Meisner by now. The Meisner Technique is a very melodic way of doing theater, and it is a really fun way for people to get bonded with their cast members, and it's a fun way to explore yourself, your basic instincts, and the world around you, really. So who is Meisner? Because, you know, these terms are often derived from people's names, and this just so happens to be derived from a man named Sanford Meisner. Hopefully you have heard the beautiful quote, "Acting is living truthfully through imaginary circumstances." Basically, what Meisner's trying to say there is that you should be acting truthfully, you know, to your truest form, but you should be acting. It is an imaginary circumstance. You have never been the high emperor priest to a temple. Well, maybe you have. Have you? But if you haven't, you have to create an imaginary circumstance to make it your truth as an actor. Take any time someone plays a vampire or a werewolf or Frankenstein's monster. I don't think there are many Frankenstein's monsters out there, but you have to put yourself in those imaginary, truthful circumstances so that you could play it to your fullest performance. So theater in the 1920s had permanently changed in America when Moscow Art Theater ended up touring New York. This brought a bunch of new young actors to explore the Stanislavski method. People were adopting this method and morphing it and changing it almost into their own form. It was so popular and so intriguing because compared to how acting was in America at the time, it was pretty mechanical. When the Stanislavski method entered into America through the Moscow Art Theater, it was very natural. They were very into making every movement true. Now, this method also became much more popular because film was on such a rise in Hollywood and acting was going through the roof. There was high demand for it, and this natural approach to the arts was very good for film and television. Sanford Meisner is a Jewish immigrant from Hungary who came over to America. He was a part of the famous group theater. This was an American acting troupe that aimed to knock off the Russian movement. Meisner became an extremely well-to-do actor. He was known throughout his area, but he would find later on that his true calling is actually teaching. So as Meisner grew older, he ended up teaching a lot at the local playhouse. And at the playhouse, he found that his version of this Stanislavski method turned into the Meisner Technique. It was a very natural way of approaching acting and approaching emotions to your characters. Again, you're taking a very imaginary circumstance and making it your truth. Now, the difference with Meisner's methods, which make it so intriguing and so fun to watch an entire classroom do, is the repetitiveness. So you are doing these motions in repetition, which become a flow, which become a bond, which in turn makes it almost like groupthink. If you've ever taken a Psych 101 class, you know what groupthink is, and if you don't, I'm gonna explain it to you right now, don't worry about it. Groupthink is a method of thinking amongst a group. So if one person claps after a show, the rest of the room will clap after a show because it is appropriate to social society. If someone decides one day to punch a man in the face randomly, and no one is okay with it, then no one will be okay with it because it is not socially acceptable. Now say, same man punches someone in the face, but two people start clapping randomly. They start clapping for the man who's punching the other one in the face. Maybe a group forms and the rest of them are clapping, encouraging the beating of this man. That is exactly what groupthink is. It is a groupthink method that is socially acceptable. When you are doing theater, The groupthink method is extremely beneficial because you want to be one. If you do not think as one, you are not fully accomplishing the show to your fullest extent, especially in improvisation. Improvisation methods and techniques, especially with Viola Spalin's work, helps you think like a group. It makes you and forces you to work together because that's what you have to do in theater. Theater is not a one-man show. I know people do it, they don't always work out, but theater is not a one-person act. Theater is a community-based art. A simple Meisner technique actually to use, a simple exercise he does, is one that I use with every single one of my students. The purpose for this is so that you become more aware with your space. It is an extremely fun exercise where everyone just walks around the room. You're just walking, everyone is walking in sync, everyone is observing the room, and I make sure to tell them, I want you to look at everything you see. Everything you see is supposed to be processed. So as they walk around the room, eventually I tell them to freeze, and I tell them to close their eyes, and I tell them to point to something in the room, whatever item it may be. But they have to do it while their eyes are closed. I know this seems a little nuts, but everyone can find the item that I'm looking for because it's basic human instinct. It is a natural way of doing theater. You are becoming biologically and instinctually aware of the world around you. We also really like to teach Meisner techniques for people who are going into a new workspace and they have high anxiety. So if you are a person who knows that you get anxious in new environments or around new people, it is very, very helpful to go to that space early and walk around the space. Learn the new space you're in. Kind of like going to a meeting, it's a power move if you show up first. You want to make that power move. You want to show up first, evaluate your space so you are much more comfortable. And it truly does help. Another one of my favorite exercises within Meisner is the stop and go. Now, again, a lot of different people call it different things, but I call it stop and go because I think I just never learned the actual name of it. You, again, walk all in a group in the space, and you are not allowed to stop doing this exercise until everyone does it at the same exact time. So everyone must stop at the same exact time without talking, without communication, without anything. Just by instinct, you are supposed to stop at the exact same time. And then you are supposed to proceed walking at the exact same time, which is very difficult in a room full of 30 people, but I've seen it happen. The reason you want to do this, the reason you want this instinct of two people moving at the same time or two people freezing at the same time is because that is your basic human nature. If you are extremely familiar with a person, you're gonna know how they move. You're gonna know their mannerisms. You're gonna know their energy of the person. And I'm not saying energy as in spiritual energy. I am saying that scientifically, everyone has their own energy, or else you wouldn't be able to conduct things while you slide your socks on the carpet. So this energy that we feel from other people can be used for, again, your basic instinct. You have your gut. People say, I listen to my gut when I go into a dark alley, meaning I don't go into the dark alley. Don't go into dark alleys, people. You use your gut on stage. If you see that one of your cast members isn't feeling well on stage and you need to cover for that, you need to know how to do that naturally with that person. If the person isn't comfortable with you, if the person doesn't really know you, then they're not gonna let you help them. It's, again, a communal art. So you need to be able to work with other people. What's funny is every time we do the Meisner techniques, people physically will cringe at some of the exercises because, yeah, they're funny sometimes. You know, you're literally swinging at the same time sometimes just to get your bodies in the same flow. You're mirroring, you're passing a ball around without letting the flow of it stop. These are very melodic ways of doing theater, which in turn progress you immensely. I truly enjoy using the Meisner technique on all of my classes just because it does. It gets you goofy, it gets you more bonded, and it gets you really focused. A fun fact about Meisner is that he always knew he wanted to go into the arts. He always enjoyed it. He studied piano at a conservatory that later became Juilliard. At that conservatory, he actually ended up meeting his friend Harold, who later developed the group, which was their group. Clurman introduced Meisner to Lee Strasberg. I feel like I'm telling a story at a lunch table in high school. And that is how he learned certain techniques of the Stanislavski system. This system is now known as the method. Now, Clurman was a sort of mentor to Meisner as well, because Meisner was a 20-something who was very eager to learn and very excited to learn. So he took him under his wing and he taught him everything he knew. And if you didn't know, Stella Adler was actually in the group. Now, I'll talk about Stella Adler on another episode, but Stella Adler actually developed another portion of this Russian method that would later rival Meisner's technique. Now, where Stella Adler parts from this group is actually pretty interesting. You see, the group didn't last that long. After a while, Strasberg's method kind of became a dud. The method later was seen as extremely ridiculous by people. Stanislavski's method can be mentally draining for some people, and Strasberg really focused on emotional recall. If you don't know what emotional recall is, it is when you take a emotion that you have previously felt from an experience, whether traumatic or non-traumatic, and you bring it into the space. So you are emotionally recalling this moment in time so that you can portray that emotion. Sometimes it's not okay. Adler saw this as a very manipulative way to teach people, especially new young actors that have no idea what they're doing. To do an emotional recall and not actually be trained in other methods of acting, just jumping into it, can be pretty damaging to someone sometimes, especially if you're not trained and if you're not used to it. Now, I understand why Adler had separated herself from the group, because I will mention this at the end of the video. I want to say that acting is acting. Acting is something that should be seen as fun, and I do want to say that I understand why Adler separated herself from the group. What she means by this is a manipulative way to teach young actors is that acting is supposed to be something freeing. Acting is something that is supposed to be educational and supposed to help you build your community. When you teach people emotional recall while you are acting, when you go into the method acting, it's much more difficult for you to separate yourself from your character. Now, I'm not saying that this is the worst way to do acting. No. I'm saying that if you are an untrained actor, if you do not have some emotional support behind you or professional support behind you while you're attempting the method, you should avoid it. You should do whatever you feel safe doing. If you truly believe that you are Batman, then you're not acting anymore. Then you're Batman. Actually, that might be kind of fun. But still, you gotta be careful. There are people that choose to do method acting and are very successful at it, and they're very safe about it. And that is how you should do it. You should not be going out into the world and method acting every single role you do. That is extremely mentally draining for anyone. I don't care who you are. That is extremely mentally draining. Now, as an actor, we create as-if methods. These as-if methods are methods that are created so that you can portray the imaginary truth of this character, because you are in an imaginary world and this is a time to play. And that's it for my PSA. I want to thank you so much for joining me for this video on Meisner. I could go on for hours about this man. This is Improv is offering virtual classes, so you can sign up for improvisation, personal classes, writing, or team building classes. If you go to www.thisisimprov.com, you can sign up today, you can sign up anytime, you can shoot us an email if you want to ask us more about anything we do. This is Improv also has a podcast called This is Legends of Yesterday, where we talk about histories, mysteries, and ghost stories of Florida. So if you have a ghost story, if you have something mysterious that's ever happened to you in Florida, or if you just have a fun historical fact about Florida, you can email us at info@thisisimprov.com. Our emails and our website are also linked down below, so you can just, scroll on down and click those so you don't have to worry about memorizing it or writing it down. Also in the description down below are some websites to educate yourselves on and some people who might need a little extra help at this time. If you are someone who needs a little extra support at this time, or you know an organization that could use our help, or a website to educate some people on the world around them, you can email us at info@thisisimprov.com so we can add it to the list. I again want to say thank you so much for joining me on this video about Meisner and his beautiful technique. My name is Alexandra with This is Improv. Bye!